Whoa.
And it works.
Hey.
Woo! Wow, I don't have to press it 12 times. All right, so we're live, correct?
Yeah, it was fixed yesterday. Yeah, we're live.
Okay. All right, good morning, everybody. Let's see how much we can get done this morning. Big number, lucky, 007. Now, you got my mic?
Oh, sorry.
All right, Senate Bill 7 is the invasive and native plants classification, listing, use, and sales and use tax exemption bill. This one makes changes to how the Department of Agriculture classifies invasive plants in the state. Budget and tax is secondary on it. I think the reason budget and tax is secondary on it is there is a provision in the bill that would exempt native plant species from the sales and use tax. The sponsor of the bill requested an amendment that would take the sales and use tax exemption piece out of the bill. So I believe you'd want to consider that amendment at this point.
So moved.
Senator?
Second.
All those in favor? As amended. Thank you. Opposed?
Got it.
264.
Before, you do have a reprint on your desk that will look familiar. Just as a recap, this is the bill that establishes a property tax exemption if it's a community solar energy generating system located that does certain things. Specifically, this is on page 2 of the bill, sorry, page 3, is where some of the amendments kick in. First of all, and I believe this is a follow-up from the last time this was before you, the mined lands was struck from the definition of brownfield. Further down, a definition, basically, if the intent is that the PSC establish regulations for both the 50% of the energy needing to go to low or moderate income and that it needs to be 20% less than the amount, then I just moved that modifier to the beginning of the sentence to make that clear. And then on the back of the page, there's a couple provisions here that essentially set up that basically an application period is only open for 5 years to get this exemption. But once you get it, you get to keep it, beyond the 5 years and in perpetuity as long as you meet the requirements that are established in the bill of the 50% and the 20%. And then it also establishes a annual reporting requirement.
Yes.
I had asked the last time we talked about this about the exact projects that we're talking about. Did we get that information? If I got it, I lost it.
Pardon me, Mr. Vice Chair, I don't have it in front of me. It should be in the fiscal note, though. So the fiscal note. Yeah, they did, didn't they? So there are currently 22 active community solar energy generating systems, 2 of which meet the requirements of the bill. One is in Baltimore and the other is in Prince George's. Those are both Baltimore County. And so they do pinpoint a reduction in revenues of $44,000 for Baltimore County and $55,000 for Prince George's County.
And do we know where they are and how big they are and what they are and who's sponsoring them?
That I don't have.
I'm not trying to be trouble
Nope.
here. I'd really like to know, I want to get my head around where they really are and what they really are.
Are there any other issues with this bill? By anybody? Yes, Senator.
Thank you very much. Is this enabling for all the other jurisdictions, or this just sets it up?
It is, thank you, Senator. It is not enabling, but we feel that it is incredibly tailored based on the qualifications in it, and it is sunset at that 5 years with the reporting. So that was when we worked with MACO on this. They really wanted enabling. To do enabling, then we'd have to go, as we know, county by county to get them to buy into this program. So our kind of negotiation was, well, let's sunset it. We see that with the reporting, that it's going to do what we think and hopefully not go off the rails. And then the General Assembly has the opportunity to rein it in
if it is not meeting our intent.
But it's specific enough to projects now that they don't, anywhere, yeah, that they don't have an option.
Yeah.
The locals. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the other question I had was, I can't get my head around how they will guarantee that 50% goes to low-income families.
I mean, I think that's the intent of the PSC would, as drafted, would be required to define that in regulation. But yes.
I buy the process, maybe
Yep.
Senator Elford, I mean, do you have any, I mean, do you have a sense of how they would do that?
They, again, I'm not a PSC expert, but
Okay.
they regulate incredibly complex energy sorry, I'm not in
That's okay.
finance.
No, that's okay.
I can't
mean,
express beyond that
I
they
just don't get
regulate
it.
this.
That's okay.
All right, well, it sounds like we're gonna hold it anyway. Oh, boy, I'm gonna get like a light, like, higher up, a buzzer, right, you get a buzzer.
No, I just had a quick question because I think I heard, during the conversation about impact on locals, are the locals weighing in on this bill?
Yeah, we worked with Mako on this. I don't want to say that they are comfortable with the sunset, but before it did not have a sunset, so we added that to make them more comfortable. MML is still opposed, but I do have a letter from Mayor Jake Day of Salisbury who understands and appreciates the goal of the bill and that it is a worthy endeavor.
Okay, I guess I was more specific since the fiscal impact of the bill. It sounds nominal for the two jurisdictions. I wondered if they had weighed in on it.
The two jurisdictions, no, but if we're holding the bill, I can get that information.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Senator Roosevelt, I know the PSC has reached out to explain this better than I can, and we can make sure that meeting happens.
That'd be great, thanks.
Okay.
Senator Young?
Will it be reviewed regularly to see that they don't just get in on with the lower income people and then they go away? I mean,
That seems to be the question. So that's a question for PSC that I'm happy to ask, that it is regularly checked upon, that the benefit is going to what the bill defines as the benefit.
I mean, as drafted, there's an annual report to you guys that doesn't quite get at your question though, but specifically, they continue to get the exemption as long as the property continues to meet the requirements of the exemption. It doesn't establish any sort of, can a county assessor require them to submit the paperwork and look at it every single year? You can certainly stipulate that. But it does require them to remain in compliance.
I would think there should be some requirement for review. I don't want somebody to get in on a benefit like this and then find out it isn't even reaching the people that we established it for.
So the typical way that that's done in the past is like an annual application.
Okay, I think we're hearing some thoughts about amendments that might need to get drafted. Yes?
This is for Senator Elford. I presume there's some project developer who wants this bill. Who is it?
The project developer, well, this is a priority, this came to us from the League of Conservation Voters.
There's no specific developer who wants to do this?
Lynn Heller, who, I wouldn't call her a developer, she does these types of solar projects for low and moderate income communities.
Well, so there's no actual developer ready to do this?
Well, that's because these types of projects are cost prohibitive because the margin is incredibly small. So they don't exist for a reason, because this tax benefit that we're trying to achieve here is the only way that they could actually make any kind of break even or profit.
So the individual you mentioned, who is not a developer, is kind of the brains behind this?
Yes.
Maybe you could connect me with her, too?
I know LCV and PSC and Lynn would all love to speak to you.
Well, I talked to LCV about it, and they didn't know any of these answers.
Okay.
Whatever we can do, thank you.
Okay, yep, happy to make that happen.
Okay. So we will put that one on hold. I'm going to move, because I think we've got people from Commerce, is that right?
Correct.
Let's move down, and it's for 391,
Yep.
more jobs for Marylanders.
Yeah, so Senate Bill 391, I don't have a reprint for you, so if you look at the first reader version, this is the one that came in for More Jobs for Marylanders, which was initially going to sunset. I believe this was going to be the last year or next year, and this basically provides an additional 5 years of companies being able to get the benefits under the More Jobs for Marylanders program.
So why don't we get a quick rehash of what, I don't know if the commerce people want to do it, or exactly what benefits this provides, and to who and how many people are actually taking advantage of it, and all the rest, those kinds of things.
Sure. So I'm Lonnie Sinfield. I'm the program manager directly responsible for the More Jobs for Marylanders at Commerce. The program started in 2017 when we started accepting notices of intent from companies who were interested in taking advantage of the program. It was then amended in 2019 to include the Opportunity Zone benefits to non-manufacturers. Since the enactment in 2017, we've had about 300 companies submit notices of intent, their intent to participate in the program and take advantage of the 10-year benefits under the program. There has been about anywhere between 80 to 90 businesses that have actually enrolled in the program, that have been, their applications were reviewed, that they met the statutory requirements, and that they qualify for the benefits. Of those 80 to 90, approximately 54 have progressed to the first year that they've been reserved their income tax credits for jobs that they say that they're going to create. This bill does a couple of things. One is to extend the sunset from June 1st, 2022 to June 1st, 2027. That is to permit companies that are in our pipeline to take advantage of this program. Currently, a company must be enrolled. We have to see their enrollment applications. They have to be approved to be enrolled in the 10-year benefits before June 1st, 2022. We know through our attraction team and through our regional sales rep team that there are a lot of companies out there that want to take advantage of the program, but for timing reasons cannot participate before that June 1st, 2022 date. I believe we've previously provided information that, at least on our attraction side, there's about 30-some projects, significant projects that are creating thousands of jobs that would potentially be impacted with the extension of the sunset. Another component of the bill is to change a mechanism when the Comptroller is supposed to transfer money from the MGM Income Tax Reserve Fund to the general fund when we issue a final certificate. So when a business shows to us that, yes, they've created the jobs, they've been employed for at least 12 months, and these are the wages that they've received, we issue them a tax credit based on 5.75% of their aggregate payroll. Sometimes the difference between what we reserved for them and what we issued to them, there is a delta. Currently under the bill, if they fall under what we've reserved for them, Commerce still loses that money. So we can't reappropriate it or encumber it to another business. It goes back to the general fund. So this just ensures that the More Jobs for Marylanders Reserve Fund maintains the money
Appropriated by the governor.
appropriated by the governor. Thank you.
In terms of the specific benefits, page 2 to the top of page 3 of the fiscal note, the type of benefits you get completely depend on whether you're in Tier 1, Tier 2, whether you're a manufacturing business, whether you're not a manufacturing business. And so this fiscal note breaks it out into fairly simple terms of what track leads to which benefits for what type of company at a certain location. So specifically, if you are eligible for all, there are potentially 4 benefits. If you are a Tier 1 new manufacturing, and that's listed on page 2. The income tax, refundable state income tax, that's the 5.75 that she talked about. There is a credit on certain state property taxes, a refund of sales and use tax, and a waiver of corporate filing fees. However, I believe that a couple of those benefits have never been used. It's primarily been the income tax.
And what's the distribution of this around the state?
So I have a chart, can certainly make copies. I have a chart that's based on notices of intent. I don't know if the department can chime in terms of the final certificates that have actually been awarded. But it ranges from, in terms of notices of intent, 64 in Baltimore City, to a low of 1 in Charles County. Every county has had at least one notice of intent submitted to the department.
And that just means, what's the size, what size do you have to be of a business? Does it matter? Doesn't matter.
Nope.
Senator Quarterman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you touched on part of, what I was going to get into as far as around the state. And I appreciate the department. I know they shared some information with us that broke down the final certificates, and we spoke a little bit in our subcommittee yesterday about this also. First off, I love more jobs for Marylanders. Washington County has done tremendously well, so thank you for that. But I speak to also, I know for or with the senior senator from Washington County, and specifically Allegheny and Garrett, when we look around, you talk about the distribution, and of those final ones, the tier ones, which we're always hopeful that that's really what it's going to invigorate and drive, the tier ones, over half the tier ones have never gotten a final certificate. 7 of the 13, I believe, have never gotten one. And then when you look at the tier 2s, which typically are some of the areas that are already prospering to begin with, you have over 80% of the credits have gone to tier 2s. I think yesterday's report was 87%, which is really obviously closer to 90, are in the tier 2s. So, yeah, I'm all for the program. And this probably isn't the day to fix it, but at some point in time, we have to somehow look at that and how to, I don't know how you incentivize more in some of these tier 1s, but I just don't believe the intent is really being accomplished exactly as what we've all have hoped. Again, our county has been fortunate, and I am thankful for that, but I really think it's when we're talking about the equitable distribution across the state, it's a little lagging, especially in the tier 1s, so.
And the information that Senator
That's okay.
Senator Quarterman just shared is listed on page 4 of the fiscal note.
Senator Zucker, did you have a question? Senator Edwards?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow up my colleague from Washington County. Maybe you said it a little denser this morning. What is the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 2?
Thank you, Senator.
Tier 1 is a defined term that basically looks at, I should have printed that out and brought it with me. I don't know if you guys can answer more
Baltimore
off the top of
City,
your head.
Allegheny, Baltimore,
Yeah, it
Caroline,
lists-
Cecil, Dorchester, Garrett, Kent,
Right.
Prince George's, Somerset, Washington, Wycomico,
Yeah.
Worcester.
There is a calculation based on income and unemployment criteria, so at least as of the summer, the department was saying that there's very little movement in and out of whether you're tier 1 or tier 2. One thing that is unique to More Jobs for Marylanders is that the department is actually able to also identify 3 additional areas as tier 1.
If my memory is correct, I think we did change the original one because we didn't have a tier 1 and a tier 2, and we created the 2 tiers. We created the 2 tiers to help out the counties, the chairman mentioned, who probably need a little more help than some of the more prosperous counties in the state. My colleague from Washington County had a bunch of charts he pulled up, showed to me. And 2 counties I represent, Garrett and Allegheny, I don't think got any of them. But maybe one, because he said every county had at least one. So I have a little concern of how is Commerce working with the locals or pushing the locals. If we have these counties that have one, and then you have some that have 30, 40, whatever, to help move them to apply for these programs, which was the intent of breaking it apart from tier 1 to tier 2 scenario.
Do you want to comment on?
Sure. So we actively work with local governments and local EDs. For example, I know that right now there's an ongoing project for a mining operation in a opportunity zone that could qualify for More Jobs for Marylanders. The question for that specific company is whether or not it can meet the current sunset of that June 1st, 2022, given the fact that it has to set up its operations, which does include things like construction, land acquisition, and then ultimately hiring. When you talk about the final tax credits in More Jobs for Marylanders, that's the business has already been in operations, and the minimum number of jobs have been in place for at least 12 months. So I do think that as far as tier 1 projects, there may be more of that economic development that needs to be done at the forefront before the hiring can actually occur. which is why the data currently shows that there are more Tier 2 projects that are receiving the certificates because it's easier for them to do the hiring as opposed to the other things that would be required in a Tier 1.
Well, I know the one you mentioned because I'm the one that directed them to this program, and it is construction. You have to do construction to do the portals and all that kind of stuff, and they plan on being around because their orders says you're concerned about coal and producing electricity or metallurgical coal. It's the best metallurgical coal in the world. As long as their orders hold up, they could be in there for 20-plus years. So to me, that would be not a particular no-brainer to grant that. So hopefully your people will keep wanting to get whatever needs to be turned in. But I still have some concern since it's been in effect, I think, Erica said from 2017, that we need to put a little more emphasis on these areas that the chairman mentioned that sit in that category to try to get more businesses to participate, for a better way to say it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Griffith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this is a question for the department. Just trying to get a sense of the impact of the pandemic on the implementation and whether or not that is it sounds like there was a point where letters of intent were coming in the wide end of a funnel, but only, very few getting out the other end. So I was wondering if the pandemic maybe had some effect there, and whether or not you've given some thought to, as others have stated, changing promotion strategies now that we're moving to the next phase of the endemic.
I would say the pandemic most certainly did have an impact on probably slowing down some of those projects. As Lonnie mentioned, we've got a lot of interest in the program at varying stages. It's a 4-step application process. So the notice of intent is the very first step where a business lets us know they're interested in the program. They need to submit that before they do their hiring. And then they move through to the next step of actually enrolling in the program, submitting their initial application, and then once they have completed all of the requirements, they're hiring, jobs have been in place for 12 months, then they eventually submit their final certificate or final application to be issued that final certificate and actually receive the tax credit. So that's where we have a lot of companies at different levels. I think it's picked back up as people have resumed hiring since we've moved further through the pandemic. So we are seeing rising levels of interest and actually additional final certificates being issued. And our business development team is in constant communications with those businesses that are working through the process that we've been working with to attract and grow their companies here in Maryland. But one other thing that I should mention that we have been doing is we have submitted draft regulations for the program to try and clear up some of the processes. So right now in statute, it does require that we prioritize applications from Tier 1 jurisdictions. The problem so far has been there's no application deadline. So businesses can submit their application at any time during the year, and then we process and approve those applications as they come in. We have submitted regs that would set an application deadline so that each fiscal year, all businesses interested in reserving credits for that year would apply on a specific date, and the department would then look at all of those applications at the same time, process them, approve them, and then we've set a priority order by which applications or businesses would receive tax credits. So if there's a limited amount of funding and not all businesses will receive credits, we've prioritized which would be first, including the Tier 1s. And if there is not enough interest at that point and there's money left over, we could then reopen another application deadline and bring companies back in. So that is one way that we're working on putting the processes in place to prioritize those Tier 1s so that when they are ready to submit their final application, there are funds available for them.
Thank you. And last point, I don't have a sense of the size of the team that's dedicated to this effort and whether or not you're doing any technical assistance to businesses who may be interested but may not have gone through a process like this before.
I would say it's a somewhat all-hands-on-deck effort within the department. So Lonnie manages a team of, how many are on? A team of 5. She has one other individual who reports to her that's directly responsible for this program and does work with businesses. If applications come in and they're missing information or if they're not quite ready to be approved, that individual does work with those businesses to get them through the application process. And then on top of that, we do have our regional representatives they represent every jurisdiction in the state, so they're working with businesses, kind of on the boots on the ground, assisting them to get where they need to be ready to apply for the program. And then our attraction team on the other side is looking at bringing those companies in and promoting this program to those companies to try and bring them to the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So is this program available clearly to brand new companies, but also to companies who want to expand the number of employees? So on the first case, when someone actually asks for their first license, they pay their first $300 or whatever to get their LLC or whatever it is. Is there notice in there that this is an availability?
I would say if they have not been in contact with the Department of Commerce and just
So
decide to
SSTAT
open up
does not
business.
provide information when they sign up for as a business, that there may be a number of, and this might not be the only program, it just occurred to me as I was sitting here.
Right.
That there may be other programs that sort of should be listed there, or at least the Commerce's website should be on their information when they receive it, that you may be eligible for a number of things, just a thought. Senator Zucker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No, it's interesting that you say that, because Chair King yesterday in subcommittee asked a very similar question to the same agency on another program, so it sounds like information is important. But one of the questions I had, and it might be a little bit in the weeds, but Lonnie, thank you for being here this morning. One of the things that you mentioned that it looks like it's a significant part of the bill that you mentioned is it looks like there's initial tax credit certificate that's issued, and then you spoke about a delta, I guess, because now you're going to change it to modifying to the final certificate. But maybe I just didn't hear it, and I apologize. What is that number, though? What is that monetary number, that delta?
Currently, the delta is around $800,000 that the department has lost between the initial and the final certificates.
And then, okay, so it's captured. So let's just say that say the bill passes and that language stays in. So that $800,000, does that go back to the general fund and then reinvested into the program?
It would remain in the reserve fund. So when we approve an initial certificate, we approve the company for an estimated amount that they believe they will be eligible for. When they submit their final certificate, they can be approved for an amount that is less than the initial. They cannot be approved for more. And once that final certificate is issued, the amount that was approved in the initial is what is then transferred to the general fund to essentially cover that tax credit when they claim it. So this would change that so that the amount issued in the final is what transfers to the general fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Eckert.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I did have a question back on the Tier 1, because I understand that even though, like, Dorchester County may be designated Tier 1, there are only certain areas within that county that are designated Tier 1. And it came up because we have an area that is low income, but right across the creek are high-end properties where people don't reside there, but they have property there. And my understanding, then that negates those businesses from across the creek from qualifying. Is that correct?
So for the purposes of the Tier 1 designation, the data is looked at on a county-wide basis. So yes, if you have some areas of a county that are obviously lower income than other areas, if the overall, if the county in general does not meet the threshold to be designated a Tier 1, it would be designated a Tier 2. For the purposes of this program, it was expanded so that opportunity zones are also included as a Tier 1, but only for non-manufacturing businesses. So there are some small areas of counties that may be a Tier 2 county that are considered Tier 1, but it's just the opportunity zones.
Yeah, well, this business didn't qualify. And they were, 30 miles out of town. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Back to Tier 1 and Tier 2. So it's geographical, I got that. And the only value of being a Tier 1 is you get a priority?
More benefits.
A new business in a Tier 1 area is eligible up to 4 different benefits under MJM. Those benefits exist for 10 years. It includes the income tax credit, the real property tax credit, the SDAT fee waiver, and the sales and use tax refund.
And what is available in Tier 2s?
Tier 2 is limited only to the income tax credit.
Got it. Okay, I
And
understand.
the job threshold is,
And the job thresholds are also different, thank you. In a Tier 1, the minimum job to create to be eligible for MJM is 5, whereas in Tier 2,
Gotcha.
it's 10.
Okay, so there are multiple differences in terms of the benefits. I understand. And the opportunity zone is in the current law or in your bill?
current law.
Current law. And so how many of these are in opportunity zones in Tier 2 counties?
How many opportunity zone projects do we, is it just one project?
There's about 2 projects currently enrolled in More Jobs for Marylanders from Opportunity Zones.
They're in Tier 2 counties?
In
that's
Tier
the-
2.
Which counties are those?
Oh, I'm sorry. One is definitely in Tier 2, and then the other one I'm not entirely sure of. I think Talbot isn't.
I think that's a Tier 2.
Yeah, so they are both in Tier 2.
And what counties?
Frederick and Talbot.
Okay, thank you. I've asked a number of questions of the department and other departments related to this. I've gotten some answers, but haven't gotten the rest of them. And as I mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I want to hold it for that reason. But since you're here, there are training provisions in the existing law. And I haven't seen information of what training has actually been done. Do you have data on that?
That would have been through the Department of Labor, and I'm sorry, I thought that they were following up with you on that from the hearing. So I will circle back with the Department of Labor and get that information.
That would be great, because I think the law says each employer has to have basically a training plan. And I'd like to understand what training is actually being done with the folks who've actually gotten the money.
It depends on the different businesses because they operate differently. So there
understand.
is a requirement that to be enrolled in the program, the employer has to offer ongoing job skills training.
Right.
And so that varies by the type of business that's operated.
I'm sure, but I presume you have details about training they're providing for in each of the businesses.
Sure, it could be anywhere between safety training protocols.
No, I get it conceptually, but I'm looking for the details. This company's doing this training for these workers. That's what I'm looking for, is the
Right, we can
detail,
follow up
company
with
by
you with
company.
that information.
That would be great. And then what is the average subsidy dollar amount per job?
That's in the fiscal note.
I'm sorry, I don't have the fiscal note in front of me.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm just looking. Okay, so in 2021, according to a report from the department, they estimate on average, a business will receive the income tax credit of about $5,000 per job.
And does that vary between Tier 1 and Tier 2, I presume, given the variety of benefits?
Not in terms, I mean, that's based on the 5.75%, so it would just be varied based on the wages paid.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Sorry, so that benefit is pegged at 5.75%.
But that's only on the income tax credit, not the rest of the, not the rest of the subsidies in Tier 1?
Yeah, so the other subsidies don't have to do with income tax credits, and they actually aren't really being used by the companies. So the data really is just about the income tax.
So none of the other benefits for Tier 1 companies are being used?
That's our latest data, unless the department has
Is that correct?
more. I just know our research showed
I believe that there are 4 new businesses in Tier 1 counties, the Tier 1 areas that are eligible. At least one of them, and I believe they're in Washington County, I know is taking advantage of it, only because tangentially, I was assisting SDAT with the issue about the real property tax. But the other ones, I believe, include Prince George is one of them, and, yeah, but there's 4 of them that are eligible currently for it.
Right, but there must be some dollar amount you can attach to the value of the benefit.
That was part of our research in DLS in producing the tax credit evaluation report. There was not good data at that point in time. Certainly follow up and see if there's additional
Thank you.
information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right, I think there's enough still hanging out there that we're going to hold on to that, but that was very helpful. Thank you for coming in today, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Senator King, you said you wanted to hold 369?
Yeah.
So we're holding also 369. We're going to come back to the Conservation Finance Act, see what else we can get done here. 448.
Sorry, one last note for me on the last bill so I don't forget.
What's that?
Just making one last note on the last bill
Oh,
before
yeah,
I
yeah,
move on to that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Okay, Senate Bill 448. This is a bill that deals with both the regional resource centers as well as the county libraries. And as you all recall, those are funded on a per capita basis based on the population area that those libraries serve. And what this bill does is between fiscal '23 as well as ramping up through fiscal 2028, it kind of does these incremental per capita increases in terms of their funding formula. There is an amendment that is technical and correcting a drafting error just with a reference to certain years. The cost of this, according to the fiscal note, is estimated to range from 2.6 in 2024, going up to about 10 million by 2027.
What's that, Senator Zucker?
Would it be all right, Senator King, if I co-sponsored? Okay, thanks.
Do you recall, Senator, why they chose to go to 28? Just to say, is it just it's like just a 5-year? Or does someone know?
Typically, in the past, when you've had these bills, you know, they either pick, let's just ramp up for 3 years, I mean, it's kind of just what the request is.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking, of course, I'm always wearing my hat about what I've got to think about for the structural stuff. And since we do have question 1 next year and moving in the right direction, I was thinking of maybe just doing 3 years. But it's still not that huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things. What's that? Well, that's what I was just thinking. It's a little bit on the fly here, but I'm just, it doesn't reach a threshold that really concerns me, but we're still a little early in the process of knowing what we got, as I said. I wish I knew.
Do you want to hold it, or do you want to go for the 3 years?
I will do either. I'll leave it up to the committee, but Senator Jackson, yeah.
Since I represent 3 counties and I love my library systems, I would like to be a co-sponsor as well.
Whatever it is, you want to be a co-sponsor. Well, why don't we start with that? Who wants to be a co-sponsor?
There you go. And then let's hold the bill.
You like the scaling?
I'm sorry, was that everyone to be added? I didn't see everyone's hands up.
Oh, yeah. Raise your hand if you want to be added.
Senator Zucker didn't want to be added.
We haven't figured the amount.
Right, oh, good point, good point. There's just so much enthusiasm for whatever we do here.
And then we'll hold it.
And then we'll hold it, right? I want to talk to them. let's just send it, Eric, can we just set word out to them and see if that in any way really, I know everybody wants the clarity of a longer term, but it's not like that we don't have a commitment. Right. Yeah, we'll just have a conversation with them and see how it goes. Okay. 463.
Senate Bill 463 is the Wamada Dedicated Funding Amendment Act of 2022. The bill modifies the formulas that the state provides capital funding to Wamada. Right now, there's two grants that the state is providing to Wamada. One of the grants has a 3% annual inflator on it. The first part of the bill repeals that 3% annual increase to that capital grant. And then the second part of the bill is contingent on Virginia and DC enacting similar legislation, but it would, assuming that contingency is met, it would move the 3% inflator to there's a $167 million transfer that's going to Wamada now, and it would apply that 3% inflator to that $167 million transfer that's going to Wamada.
The first part of the program, how big is that? That currently has the 3%?
$143 million.
So it's roughly equivalent.
Yeah.
Roughly. So it decreases and then increases, but the bottom line is that to keep the program, we have to, like we did before, work with Virginia and DC. I think we've made a pretty big commitment to this program. Is there any thoughts? Senator Salling.
Didn't he say that, I think it was Virginia already agreed, or was it just Washington DC that agreed with this? Because I know we had Virginia,
I think
Washington.
it was DC, yeah,
It's DC, but we're still waiting for Virginia,
correct,
and it has to be like a
correct.
tribal, I guess you could say, thing that they have to all agree. Okay, thank you.
Senator Edwards.
Yeah, didn't we, and you might have mentioned it, was it last year when we gave them a hefty increase?
I think it was a couple years ago, but last year, what we did was, remember when we were dealing with the MTA, we did not in a completely equivalent kind of thing, but a similar concept when we raised over multiple years the funding for not only the Baltimore region, but it extends across the state in various ways.
So the 167 million you mentioned, is that an increase over what they got before, or what's the 167 million?
I think that was the original, wasn't it?
That's current law. The 167 is in place. It's the 3% inflator is now going to be applied to the 167.
Yeah.
So if the other two parties go along, what we're saying is then henceforth and evermore, there's going to be a 3% increase of the 167 million or the 143 million you mentioned?
The 167.
So every year after this, if the other two, the other state and the DC agree, we're gonna be adding 3% regardless to this amount of money. And I think in the debate we had on this before was, some of us are concerned that this is gonna take money from road work and other parts of the state, and we're giving them, in my opinion, a heck of a lot of money to do what they wanna do, or what some people think they wanna do. I don't think the department supports this, and I have a concern that this will take money from other construction, transportation projects in the state by guaranteeing them 3% every year. I think they ought to come back every year if they want more money, and come back every year and ask the legislature for it instead of wrapping it in an automatic 3% increase. Just my comments.
Uh-huh. Is it in fact 3% ongoing?
Correct.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I'm not opposed to mass transit. I
Yeah.
think that, you know, we
Yeah, I
need to
mean,
have
look,
it, but I'm concerned that we're gonna cut other areas out
Yeah.
of improving their transportation.
I think probably the bigger problem is, to be honest with you, that we have some mechanism that actually raises money, period.
Yes, we
And that's gonna
discussed
be
that
the bigger
before.
issue, that we're gonna really have to, not gonna do it this year. You know, I've been saying this last couple years.
You're correct.
And, we're gonna have to do something of consequence, I think, in the years to come, so.
You're right.
Yes, Senator Eckert.
Yes, I would just add that most of our highway contractors, the folks who are used to working on the roads and bridges, were also against this, because it does designate a certain amount for a certain period of time. And the biggest issue in the rural areas is getting highway user monies back again, to be able to keep our roads in good repair, which is
Well,
sorely
We've
in need.
supported that too, as
Thank
you
you.
know.
Yep,
And
I hear ya.
We've got bills coming in this year to do that too. Senator McCray has a bill, the governor has a bill, and I think Senator McCray's bill is actually more generous, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I'd like to get something voted on today, but this is all important. It's important stuff. I think we'll try to get an answer from them. I'm worried about any kind of modification to what this is, given what DC may have already passed, how it affects the arrangement that we have. So I want to, being sensitive to your concern, Senator Edwards, Senator Eckert, will at least think about whether or not it can be limited in terms of the 3%. We'll just ask. We'll see how that fits into the whole thing. At the end of the day, I support this, and I think it's important. I think it needs to be done personally. I'm willing to at least entertain the idea that we could possibly modify it if it works with this arrangement, which I do not want to muck with. Senator King?
Yeah, I have the same concerns. I am totally pro-transit, but I am also pro-roads, and I'm looking at my part of the state where transit isn't always convenient to way too many people, and so we've got to find some happy medium there where we're funding roads, but also putting money into transit. So I get stuck on this one.
Senator, yes. Edwards?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your comments, and as you said the other day, the committee almost agrees every time. This may be one, not quite that. My concern is that we're locking in a 3% increase, as I understand the conversation here, for infinitum, basically. I mean, it's always subject to change every year. You can change whatever. But that's one of my major concerns with this. But I also agree with your comments, and I've talked to you about this before. We need to find another funding mechanism for transportation. I think if your memory's correct, I threw out one or two things to you that we ought to look at. And yeah, it's going to be some form of tax increase, but as it deals with electric vehicles. A lot of states now are taxing electric vehicles because they use the roads. They don't buy gas. You don't get any tax from the gas to help maintain the roads. You got to get money some way. So I'd be happy to throw out 2 cents worth on that, and you can work on it next year when I'm not here, and I'll call you on the phone and say, consider this, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no, I'll tell you though, Senator, I'd love to get you voting on a tax increase this year, though. Before you leave. Before you, right.
I have supported one or two over the years, Mr. Chairman. But I mean, that's my concern, locking. Maybe you could find some way that's actually not locking in it every year, but you.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Senator Rosenthal? No?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My library folks are getting back to me that we typically have done 5 years for them.
Yeah. You know what, I'm fine to do it, to be honest. Well, first off, I guess we're gonna hold this one, the one we're currently talking about. And if, I'm ready, I'm willing to move, on the library. Let's do the
So moved.
5 years, as is. There's an amendment. What's the amendment do?
It just corrects a drafting error of the number of years, with the dates. in it.
Okay, all right.
And then you gotta resolve the co-sponsor issue.
Oh, right. Who wants the co-sponsor? Hands up. Everybody? Well.
He wants to. I know Senator McCray.
You know Senator Crane. You're no Senator McCray. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, 5 years. We got one through.
Two, yeah, it's two.
Yeah, right. We did. Although that's not ours. So Senator King, you got this. All right. 477.
Senate Bill 477 is a bill that's going to require the Comptroller to set up a private letter ruling program within the Comptroller's office. It establishes a new legal division within the Comptroller's office, and that division is going to be in charge of issuing private letter rulings. A private letter ruling is a written determination by the Comptroller's office regarding the application of tax laws to a specific set of facts that a taxpayer may have. So it basically gives the taxpayers certainty when they do a filing, so it's not, they have some comfort in the tax position they're taking, by getting the Comptroller to basically bless it before they take that position. It's a concept that other states have and is used at the federal level. Maryland just has never had a formal setup like this, and so this bill would force the Comptroller's office to set up that program.
And could this apply to any taxpaying entity?
Any taxpaying entity could apply and have their situation evaluated by the Comptroller.
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just committee, I have a situation in my district right now, and my office has been the kind of negotiator between the Comptroller's office and the taxpaying entity. I don't think that's appropriate, and I think this bill would provide some much-needed relief for all of us in our constituent services. And I would move favorable when appropriate.
You have a question, Senator King?
Yeah. Does this set up a whole new office, and how many people would have to man that office?
It sets up, yes, there's a new division in the Comptroller's office. There would be 6 attorneys, I think is how many positions they're gonna hire.
Okay, and we're putting money in the budget to cover those positions?
Yeah. That's what the fiscal note has.
It's gonna be an increased cost in fiscal '23 of $722,000.
Okay.
It will be ongoing,
Yes.
yes. Eventually, yeah. Senator Querman?
Thank you. Maybe I missed it. Was this amended or no? Because there was concerns from I guess the chamber and also the CPA's group about the 3-year.
So the issue that the CPA group raised is you can take the tax position and then rely on the letter that the Comptroller's office has provided you. In the bill, it's up to 3 years. I believe the CPA organization wanted it just open-ended until tax laws change or there's a regulation change. I had heard that the House may have voted this and pushed that 3 years back. I don't know for certain.
What does back mean?
Pushed it back to, I want to say 7 years, but I don't know for sure that it's 7 years. But I had heard that the House may have amended it this week to push that back. It sounds like Senator Edwards heard something similar. Okay.
So I guess that we looking to amend it in some form or fashion of
Maybe.
No,
the chamber I'm open to that.
Yeah, the chamber has to strike it all together.
Yeah.
CPA's had the other you know?
Yeah, I
So I don't know what the happy medium is to make it all work and appease them all, but it doesn't seem it should be too
Yeah.
complicated.
Was that the only amendment they did?
That's,
Senator?
So the bill, as it came in, makes the letter ruling binding forever?
3 years,
The bill is 3 years.
correct.
as introduced.
And, okay, then I'm confused. Then the chamber or somebody wanted it
Wants
to be
it
forever?
Forever,
Okay, well, A, I don't think it should be forever. B, I think it doesn't really matter whether it's 3 years or 7 years. I think it should be for a fixed period of time. Number three, I think I'm sure the fiscal note doesn't say this, but I think this will save money as well as spend
Yes.
money by getting certainty.
There's no question,
And so I think it's really worth doing.
yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Edwards?
I just want to make it clear, I don't know if they voted on it, but one of the testifiers said they were asking for 7 years.
I see. Senator Ecker, did you look it up? Is it what it says? You don't see if it's done then or not. Would you like an amendment to that, Senator Corbin? Is that what you're motioning? Okay, is there a second?
The amendment is to
Go to 7.
go to 7.
Okay. On the amendment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Favorable on the bill.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Yes.
Thank you very much. There is, in the bill, there is something that deals with the administration of the Comptroller's office, so I'd like to take the rule on both the amendment and the bill as amended.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I thought you were gonna run the office. You were gonna get
Other duties as assigned.
Senator Corderman, you got that bill?
Very quiet.
Oh, that's another big one. What time is it? Well, I'm planning to go in pretty much till we go start session, so, just so you know. I'm gonna leave those two big ones till the end, I think, so. 5:43. I'm waiting on McCray too, since he's not here.
Yeah, Senate Bill 543, I'm not aware of any amendments. So if you find it on the floor system, basically what it does is, currently there's notification and advertising requirements when local jurisdictions are going to be adjusting their property tax rates.
Yep.
This one creates one for local jurisdictions if they are going to be establishing a constant yield tax rate. There's a difference here. So they're already required to notify if they're going to set one that exceeds the constant yield tax rate. This one adds a notification advertisement if they intend to set a real property tax rate. If they're going to maintain their current real property tax rate. So now notification advertisement will go out both if they're going to exceed the constant yield tax rate and if they're just going to maintain their property tax rate. But it's the exact same process, notification of public hearing, things like that.
I had a different impression of what this did. Senator Young?
That wasn't my impression of what it did either.
Yeah.
I'd just like to eliminate the
That's
thing.
what I was thinking. Yeah, it's so confusing.
The constant yield tax rate's just something the legislature threw on municipalities and
Yep.
counties years ago
Yep,
that should have never been there.
yep. Yeah, I mean, they basically wanted to
Make us
take
look
away
bad.
from the responsibility of being the assessors and, right, right. Yeah.
Want to amend the bill to eliminate it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, Senator King may have an amendment in a few minutes, so we're gonna hold for a few minutes on that. Okay, what's that? She is, she is.
It's like the World is texting me this morning.
Yeah. All right, 561.
Senate Bill 561 is a subtraction modification bill. It deals with employee-owned businesses. The idea is to give a tax benefit in this form, basically eliminating the income tax that's attributable to the gain that somebody would see when they transfer a business to, I believe they're called ESOPs, to an employee-owned trust. And so this would promote that, that business model by taking away some of the cost that the business owner would have when he makes that transfer over to an employee-owned business structure. I think there's 3 different structures that are out there that are available under this bill. They're called like an employee ownership trust, an employee stock ownership plan. There's one other, but the idea here is that the gain that would be taxable to the owner in the form of, at the federal level, their capital gains, it would be an income tax benefit to the owner to make that transfer into this new business structure. Presumably when the owner is getting ready to retire or divest himself of the business.
I'm trying to remember the testimony, I'm rifling through it a little bit now. Do we know how many of these we have every year?
We don't know how many we have every year.
Average.
The National Center for Employee Ownership reports that there were 114 ESOPs covering 25,000 participants in Maryland in 2019. So that's just that's not how many of these transfers happened in 2019. That's just how many of these existed in 2019.
As was mentioned, I had this bill a couple years ago. Guess I didn't have the oomph to get it over the line, but I mean, I think it's a good concept. I think the idea of getting employees, if you can, involved in the ownership, I think it's overall a good, I wish we knew how many we could anticipate in any year, on average. You say there's 100 and some already existing in the state?
Correct. That 114 were in existence as of 2019. There were.
I mean, it's not like a lot of businesses are doing this. Senator?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. Does the fiscal note address an estimated revenue loss or not?
It said, significant. Well, you know how they always.
No, I see.
Potentially.
No, there isn't one. I think it's a great concept. I think we ought to have more of them. In reality, I find it hard to believe that a state tax exemption will be a game changer in this thing, because the federal thing is so much more significant. So on the one hand, I'm not sure the bill will do that much. On the other hand, I don't think the bill will cost that much.
Right. How are people feeling? Anything else? Is there a motion?
No motion.
No motion? I guess we're holding this one too now. Okay. All right.
No, different bill.
Probably takes a
I'm just looking at this one. Okay.
567. Yeah.
This might have to be added to the list of holds. Since the hearing on Thursday, where there was a lot of feedback and a lot of great, I think, discussion amongst all the stakeholders, we've been working since the hearing ended until this morning. I just received some draft amendments from the groups. We're still running them by MACO. We want to make sure everybody's heard and everybody's comfortable. I heard in the committee there were some concerns from Senator Young over the wedding venues. I think we have a solution to that. There's a little bit of ambiguity in the bill as it was drafted. I think we'll have a solution to that as well. I have a draft amendment, but we've not run it by MACO yet, so I just wanted to throw that out to the group.
Keep working it.
All right.
All right. Let's talk parks.
I'm fine with that 543, because it's not until I had an amendment to it, so.
Okay. Okay, going back to 543,
Yep.
could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, and
Erica?
there's a clarifying point that I should make. Okay, so depending on what the constant yield tax rate, depending on what your assessable base does, the constant yield tax rate could be higher than current or lower than current, depending on if your assessable base goes up or down in the intervening time. So the current
Does everybody
notification.
understand this? Do they know, does everybody know constant yield? Yeah, have they dealt with it? Okay. Well, why don't you give us a little explanation?
Sure, so an example is, the constant yield is referring to the revenues that a locality receives based on the combination of a tax rate and the assessable base. So as the assessable base might go up or down, there is a calculation of, in order to still receive the same amount of revenues as we did in the prior year, here's where you could peg a tax rate. You could change your tax rate so that you get the same revenues. So you're always solving for revenues, basically. And what may change is the rate. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, if the current law, he clarifies that if the taxing authority intends to set a real property tax rate that exceeds the current tax rate, then there's currently a notification requirement. This adds an additional notification requirement where if the taxing authority intends to maintain the real property tax rate, but that tax rate is higher than the constant yield, then the notification requirements has to happen. As opposed to, basically, a county could, if their constant yield rate is a lower tax rate, they could lower it. So this is in the scenario where the same tax rate exceeds the constant yield tax rate.
Senator?
Are you saying we could adjust the constant yield tax rate based on assessments?
The constant yield tax rate is a moving number, but it totally based on the assessable base.
I know
Yeah,
that.
okay.
I'm just now wondering what this is even doing.
I think it's setting up a scenario, okay, so the constant yield tax rate is a fixed number in this bill, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. This is saying that, even if a county is gonna stay with the same tax rate,
Yeah,
if that tax rate happens to be higher than what the constant yield is,
yeah.
then the notification needs to go out. Because I think in the scenario is, if the constant yield is lower, it's basically notifying the residents that the county is not intending to lower the tax rate.
We have to do that now. That's the,
Yeah, you know what? I
think
actually
that's
like,
the crazy part of the constant yield.
yeah, you know what? I would like to do a little more discussion, maybe with the House on this. And I know that's a little unusual, but I really think the idea of getting rid of it is a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this has been nonsense for years, in my opinion. You're just trying to point blame is really what it is, and it's
If
really
we
kind of
apply-
silly.
yeah. If we applied that to ourselves, every year, we would have to announce that we raise taxes.
Yep, yeah, it's
When we really didn't.
I don't feel that it's provides any useful information. The public has no idea what it means.
It's strictly made to make local governments look bad.
Yeah. Senator?
Just one, like if a municipality has their own planning department and the county has a planning department, they can say this offsets that, so we get a reduction.
No.
No,
No.
that's a property tax offset, that is different.
No, that's a different issue.
That's where they exchange revenues for services that the other would have provided in place, that's different.
And that's the one where municipalities don't want to meet with the county and vice versa. That was a problem to begin with, and we had arguments up home, but I told them, you guys sit down and talk about it.
That's one where municipalities feel they're paying double taxes because they're running their own department plus they're paying for the county. You have a different issue. This is simply, the assessment goes up, so the constant yield goes up, and you can't account for the raises and things you had to give employees with it, so you have to say you raise taxes. When you really didn't raise the tax rate, it just grew because of assessments. It was designed to make local governments look bad, that's it.
Senator McCray, good to see you.
Thank you. Just want to acknowledge to the body that I was in delegation too today, so I wasn't like goofing off. I was, and chairing the delegation is important.
We generally believe when someone is in delegation, they are goofing off.
But in all seriousness, Senate Bill 543 was
Yeah.
brought to us by our local jurisdiction, as the good senator stated, and they get a number of calls, which is why we got on the phone, myself and Delegate McIntosh, and said that we would move forward. This got it drafted probably in July, so it must have happened early on because this bill was drafted back in July from that standpoint. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'll give her a call, but thank you. That's useful. Perfect timing, Senator. We're now on to 536.
Senate Bill 536 is the income tax film production activity tax credit bill. This would add digital animation projects to the types of projects that are eligible for the film production activity tax credit. And it.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? How many people want to be on this? Everybody? Everybody. Okay. Love unanimous.
I'm on board, but I got a question.
Okay.
After we pass it, that's fine.
Okay. So, we voted it, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Senator McCray.
So,
Yes, question,
the
Senator.
question is, how is it defined? Digital animation for the purposes of the credit. That's, I get the big idea, but I don't get the small idea as to what qualifies as digital animation.
It's the creation, development, and production of computer-generated animation content for distribution or exhibition to the general public.
That's pretty similar to the motion picture language?
No, the film production is different. That's why it wouldn't fall under the definition
No,
of
I know it wouldn't
film
fall, but I guess my only concern, I'm all for this, I think it's a great idea, and obviously the guy's very impressive, is sort of scale is, if I'm designing something on my laptop at home, can I get the tax credit and try to sell it? That's kind of what I'm trying to get my head around. Because obviously, a film production is like a thing, people set up stuff. This is like, kids do this on their phones.
Yeah, the spend that's required to be
Is there a minimum spend?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it falls under the normal minimum spend for the.
Got it,
film
that answers my
production.
question, thank you.
There you go.
And I think if it isn't spelled out, it should say that these still have to be local jobs. The purpose is to bring it.
It does.
Bring the
Same
jobs to
same
Maryland.
rules as the film tax,
Yeah.
the film, yeah.
Yeah.
It's piggybacking off of the rules.
Okay. 1, 2, what's the third one we did? Yay, team. All right, this is gonna be fun. So let's talk about parks. 541. And let me say this, what I would like someone to do, Senator and/or whoever, Matt, in the process of all this, let's try to pull the context of all this with program open space, what's going on, outstanding requirements or what we intend to do with repayments of program open space that we still owe, and laws that change, and all of it. Let's try to get it all together now.
541 is the what are we calling this? The Great Parks Act, the Great Maryland Outdoors Act. And so this is a big bill that makes a lot of changes to the funding mechanisms for parks. At a high level, it sweeps up some of those program open space repayments and redirects them to be used for the park system. It creates an ongoing maintenance fund for the park system, so that one of the criticisms I think that they had heard about the parks is that we didn't have a dedicated funding source for critical maintenance, so it creates that system, and then it creates another fund that's going to be used to direct the acquisition of new parkland, and then it gets rid of, and I think this is where this committee is going to come in, some of those repayment formulas for the program open space. As you know, there's been money that was taken, money that was being paid back, money that was being redirected, and this just gets rid of all of that and says, you know, we're going to use it for these purposes going forward.
Let me first ask and point out, this has nothing to do with local side of POS, or does it?
It does.
Okay?
I'm happy to dig into this. Thank you. So the bill kind of is funded through two different pots of POS. So the first part, as Matt said, is the repayment that we're on the books to owe through, I believe, fiscal '28. So this says we're going to forward fund that entire repayment in the next budget. But we did leave whole the Rural Legacy, MALF, and Marbidco, understanding that those programs are kind of essential to the agricultural community, certainly. So while we're forward funding all of what we owe, we are keeping the formula for those three programs whole. We are pulling the local side, Mr. Chair, but we've also spoken with the locals because this committee last year and this year is forward funding $85 million last year and $85 million this year in local parks and playgrounds. Everybody's okay with us taking the local side of the repayment because we are investing significantly in our locals through that other mechanism. So while it does pull the locals,
Is that in the budget already?
yes, it's in the budget for $85 million. Yes, and that's, last year was 85, this year's 85. Certain projects are designated in the governor's budget, others are not. So I'd encourage folks to look at the governor's budget.
Yes?
So when you say you're pulling the local side, if you don't have a state park, what does that mean?
I guess I'm not understanding your question. So
So if you're taking the local share
Not all the local share, just some portion.
of the repayment,
of the repayment?
Yes.
Yes. But that impacts all counties the same way? I guess that's my question.
it does all impact all counties the same way. We felt comfortable, again, because of that first ever $85 million in local parks and playgrounds last year and $85 million this year, that the state is still making a tremendous investment in our county local parks and playgrounds. That kind of compensates for us taking away the local share of the repayment.
So it goes to the locals anyway through?
Local parks and playgrounds.
Parks and playgrounds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sarah Edwards?
I just want to make sure that we have this down pat, so to
Okay, and
speak.
I will also make a chart for everybody as well. I think charts are
When
helpful.
we're talking about the local share, parks and playgrounds is different than program open space.
Yes.
So I want to know, is this going to take any money other than what you're talking about, the payback scenario, that the locals would normally get in the coming year?
In the coming year, in fiscal '23, no, they are still getting all the local that they are getting from the formula as it is, and it gets even more confusing, I apologize. In fiscal '23, there is also a repayment of what we owed for fiscal '23, and that we are leaving whole. So that is going to the formula as it is, including the local side of program open space.
So what happens after that?
What happens after that is we are taking that, it's about $106 million to invest in the park system. So the remaining repayment minus Rural Legacy, MALF, and Marbidco.
Well, my concern, again, if I heard you right, is I want to make sure that the program open space for the locals continues in the format that it's projected to be continued in.
Yep,
Because I've fought for years, I've been on program open space ever since I've been here, committee, to make sure that this is
Yeah.
one of the more important things we do in this state in this program for
Absolutely.
locals, because some of these small towns would not have parks if it wouldn't be for this program.
Absolutely. Senator, I think I hear your concern. This in no way touches the formula in the out years.
Okay.
We're not messing with the formula. It's only the repayment.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay? Yes?
I'm sorry, but that repayment was the 85 last year and the 85 this
Nope.
year?
No.
No. And I will absolutely make a chart for our Wednesday voting session, because it's pieces moving in and out in various budgets and what we owe. No, so separate and apart, this committee in the House last year understood that we needed greater investment in our locals, which is why we created the 85 million local parks and playgrounds, and I believe Senator Zucker has pulled it up in his budget book right now. That existed last year, and the governor
Overachiever.
the governor also agreed, and thankfully he put that 85 million in this year. That was coming from the general fund, that was not coming from program open space. Some projects are designated in our budget books, and I would encourage everybody to look at those, but there's a lot unallocated in the governor's budget of that 85 million. That did not come from program open space. My argument is, I feel I can sleep at night that we're taking the repayment, in part, some of it was supposed to go to the locals, and I feel okay about it because we've made such an investment last year and such an investment this year that they otherwise weren't going to get.
Okay. Thank you.
So just know the sheer numbers, though, you said it was 110, right? From the
106 million from that repayment.
106 on the local side.
Nope, on the repayment.
The
repayment of program open space as a whole.
As a whole?
Yes.
What portion of that was local?
Was local, that might take me a minute to get, but I can get it. And then the bill calls
I might
for,
want to go in your chart.
I will put that in the chart.
Yeah, yeah.
I know my staff is listening and they're making notes for the chart. So the other piece of funding the bill calls for in the stateside program open space bank account, let's call it, there is significant money that is just sitting there that DNR has not been able to use for many reasons, some of which the bill seeks to fix, has not been able to spend down that fund balance. It's been there for years. We've spoken with the secretary. They have a couple of projects in the pipeline, but in no way can they spend, we're talking about upwards of $90 million in the next 11 months. So what the bill says, the bill calls for taking 60 million of that and using it towards state parks for very similar purposes that program open space is for, acquisition and access. Turns out, good news, we don't need all that money for the bill because the governor forward funded a lot of critical maintenance for parks in the budget. So we're gonna have an amendment that brings that 60 million the bill calls for, a transfer, down to 43 million. But we still feel very strongly that it is kind of in the spirit of program open space. We're talking about acquisition for new parks, and we're talking about meaningful access.
So is
to
that
those
amount
parks.
going to just sit there then? Like
It
it's
will
been-
not sit there because we create a number of funds in the bill that DNR has the ability to spend down, and we are adding oversight to make sure that there's a more transparent process and a publicly accessible process for determining where new parks can and should go. It's a very opaque process as it stands in terms of how to use that stateside program open space money.
Okay. Senator? That was-
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please do.
I haven't read the whole bill. I was part of the commission, I guess we called it, along with Senator Elfrith and Senator Zucker. On this matter, I basically support what the report put out. I think there's a lot of good things in there. I just want to bring up one specific thing. We're talking about critical maintenance or maintenance as a whole. Some of it would be
Yep.
maintenance going forward, some of it's critical maintenance going back. As you all know, I've had a bill in for probably 5 years for what was called the state lakes bill to clean up the waters of the state that the state owns. We were fortunate to get $1 million a year for 3 years. That's going kaput. I did part of in the report is they want to create more state parks, but they want the emphasis on connected with water, if my memory's correct. So, going back to the Western Maryland Economic Development Task Force, this is one thing we looked at, that we have a bill drafted that'll be coming in here, I assume, for cleaning up the lakes of the state owns. You could change it to say waters of the state or whatever, for $3 million. So, is there any way, so we can put some emphasis on, you know, if we create more state parks with water, I'm sure people want clean water to recreate in. So can we put something in here that says they gotta set aside a certain money and part of the maintenance would be cleaning up state lakes or state waters?
I
And
think
put a
that,
category in there for a certain amount of money,
I think that's a-
specifically $3 million? So it has a little more push than what my bill does?
I think that's an excellent addition. The main charge of this commission that the Senate President and Speaker put together is how do we alleviate pressure? Because we had 300 park closures in 2020, a lot of that driven by the want for waterfront. So thinking about how do we alleviate, and that's going to be, to your point, Senator, creating new opportunities and maintaining opportunities along waterfront. We're working with Senator McCray on an opportunity in Baltimore City along the same lines. So yes, I would love to work with you on we didn't get to this critical maintenance backlog hole of about $65 million. We didn't get to it overnight. We're gonna try to get out of it in the next 3 years. But our goal here is we need to fix what's broken and then ensure that there is an adequate maintenance fund so we do not find ourselves back where we are.
And I don't disagree with that. All I'm saying is we need to look past our nose if we're looking down the future, how are we gonna take care of this stuff?
Yep.
If we're gonna add more water to parks, regardless of where it is, we need to have something in place to clean, to keep it clean.
I thought we
Or
did
clean.
something in the
We did.
budget last year on that, didn't we?
We got $1 million passed for 3 years, ran out, I think this year it ran out. We tried to get 3, but the House wouldn't be cooperative.
But Senator, I hear your concern that we need a dedicated maintenance fund that includes funding for your state lakes. And there is a dedicated maintenance fund, and we can spell that out clearer in the bill.
They're all our waters, not mine, but I think it's important. I mean, water is attractive. It's an attractive thing, and it
Yeah.
will attract more people to these parks, and I'm all for more parks. I mean, we got plenty of space in my neck of the woods. You can create a lot of parks, which they're looking at. And I think in some cases, they count state forest land in this park thing where they can
Yes.
do more things on state forest land.
Yeah.
So, you know, we want to be cooperative, but we want it taken care of, and we want it to the point that people will recreate there,
Yeah.
because that does help our economy.
Yeah.
Well, it helps all our economy.
I think, Mr. Chair, the Senator brings up an excellent point. Another challenge that has brought us to this moment is we keep acquiring new land, but not adequately investing in ensuring it's accessible and it's maintained.
Correct.
And we're seeking to fix that in this bill. It's going to take a longer conversation over the next few years as to how to achieve preservation, access, and what we're calling activation, so that folks will actually want to go there.
Okay. What else do we need to know?
There was a concern from the insurers about presumption. I've met with them yesterday. They're meeting again today. We need to work through some of that language. We have a couple of amendments, again, lowering that program open space stateside acquisition fund, only taking what we absolutely need. We are working with Senator Griffith on an amendment expressing our intent that part of our goal here is acquisition of new state parkland in communities that are connected to transit. So folks who might not have a car still have the ability to visit our state parkland. So we'll have that in the bill. Clarifying this concept of partnership parks, which is really exciting. So how can, and it's a national park model, but how can, if we have a county park that is of frankly state interest, can we have an MOU with the state park system and kind of combine our efforts in getting folks there? We worked with DNR. Their goal is to have a fund for, let's just call it activation. And so I mentioned in the hearing, our congressional delegation brought home $15 million for that very purpose. We're going to see if we can't use some of that federal fund to help with more outdoor recreation opportunities within our state parks. So you will see that amendment. We're still working through, but we're getting very close.
Very good.
And
Senator
I'll say,
Jackson.
okay.
Yeah, before we go a little further, you mentioned partnership parks. Some of us who have multiple counties, and there are regions toward the edges of the counties. In southern Prince George's County, you have Cedarville Park, which runs over, could conceivably spill into Charles County, but, you know, and I would love to see something in that regard, or know where to find it if it's already in there.
Let's chat.
Okay. Thanks.
And then we are creating a new kind of oversight commission. We're just repurposing an existing commission, adding more legislators so that frankly, we don't find ourselves in this position 10 years from now again. And then requiring there's one public hearing every year in which DNR is going to have to present publicly its master plan and its long-term strategic plan to the public and get public input. National park side, when there's a new national park, it's an act of Congress, and so there's engagement with our legislators there. We don't have that same ability here, so we're going to try to be better partners between the legislature and our state parks moving forward.
Very good. Senator Young?
Just a suggestion, include some municipal officials that have large parks, because program open spaces hurt municipalities' parks.
Yeah.
We have 70-some parks in Frederick City, and city's little sister to getting
Yeah.
funds. When we say local government, unfortunately down here, we usually only talk about counties. Frederick City's larger than 8 counties population-wise, and we have really suffered in terms of, it's great to do all these state parks, but we had real active city parks, and we've done things out on the outskirts, and now violating smart growth, people getting their cars to drive out,
Instead of
and we're not giving attention to municipal parks.
representing Annapolis, I feel your pain. That is an issue within the POS formula as it stands, that it's going to the counties, and when you have a county that's partnering with the municipalities, you'll see it flow. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, but I would love to work on that with you. I'm not sure if this bill is the right vehicle, but I'd love to work on it with you.
Well, I was just thinking, when you add people, have a municipal voice there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Senator Zucker, did you have something?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know that it was, it was a really, I guess, complex and active bill hearing with a lot of people coming in to testify. And Senator, I don't know if it was just because there was a lot of activity with people coming in and out. How many? This was a very in-depth process to kind of get to you, right? I know Senator Edwards was involved, but how many hearings did we had, like, what, 10 or something like that?
We had about 6 hearings and a couple working groups and dozens and dozens of folks who provided input to the commission over the course of the fall.
Yeah, and I think, obviously no product is perfect, but we also know that our parks aren't right now perfect because it's understaffed but they're being now overly utilized, which is wonderful. So I would say, Senator, you brought up just an absolutely fantastic point. I know that during this process, we were bringing in people from the local level, the county level, and this is a big step, and I think this is just. I think this is sending the message is, the state's commitment in terms of making sure that future generations of Marylanders can appreciate the outdoors and it'll continue to keep Maryland beautiful. But, it's going to be an ongoing process. But I think that's the crux of what this is about, right, Senator?
Yes, so we're both trying to right a lot of wrongs and fix a lot of things that are broken, and also set us up for a long-term plan that we don't find ourselves in the same position again.
Senator Rosepap?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I discussed with Senator Elfreth, they have workforce shortages in the parks as well.
Significant, yeah.
And so I have an amendment that I've shared with Senator Elfreth that we'll take up whenever we take it up, that basically would have the Park Service look at creating registered apprenticeship pathways starting in high school.
I'm shocked.
I know, I just wanted to give warning here. So, I just didn't want you to be surprised.
That, you can't, I don't think you can surprise me on that.
Just FYI.
So, Senator,
Yes.
bottom line, how much new money is there in this bill?
So the bill calls for about $150 million in between the two funds, but as I said, part of that is sitting in the stateside POS, and the other part is the forward funding of the repayment that we had committed ourselves to repaying in the out years. So in the politician answer, no new money, but pulling from other pots of money.
And there was really no pot for the repayment. So that is, in some ways,
New money.
new money.
Yes.
And how much was that total?
So we would like for this purpose to take 106 million of that with another 36,700,000 and odd money would go to the Rural Legacy, MALF, and Marbidco, since we're forward funding all of it and leaving those pieces of the formula whole. So we're forward funding that. So 106.8 million plus 36.7 million, and Matt's better at math than I am.
Is that over a number of years,
In fiscal '24,
in fiscal '24, one time?
one time.
Okay. And then presumably that is the end of repayment.
It is the end of repayment, yes.
We'll never talk about that again.
I hope so.
Until we do it the next time.
Until we borrow.
We'll do it the next time.
I know many members of Program Open Space Partners are listening, and so that was a joke. But
Right. Right. Okay, well, that's good.
we tried to be creative here.
Yep, very good. So, anybody who needs to spend a little more time on this, spend some more time on it, because we are definitely voting it at our next session. Because we're second on, no, EHE is second on this. So it's got to get over to EHE.
I will pull together a funding chart to better explain where all this is coming from.
Yep,
Okay.
very good. All right, last one.
Senate Bill 348 is the Conservation Financing Act. This is another broad bill. This one makes broad changes to a variety of existing programs to basically enhance how various agencies are able to go about trying to achieve certain environmental outcomes. So I think I'm going to start with the end first. The big thing that jumped out to me is it's authorizing, or it brings the concept of pay for success contracting into the P3 program. And so the agencies that are allowed to avail themselves of P3 public-private partnerships, those being the Department of Ag, Environment, DNR, Department of Transportation, MES, and General Services, they would now have another tool in their toolbox to enter into these pay-for-success contracts. And as I understand it, this is where the private sector comes in and sort of says, you know, we can achieve this goal that you want to achieve, and our payments or the compensation that we receive is going to be sort of contingent on you on us achieving that goal that we're telling you about. And so this jumped out at me as the big piece of this bill is making these contracts available under the public-private partnership model for these agencies to then enter into. The bill also does a handful of other broad things that encourage other programs to get out there and make changes, or to not get in the way of private sector organizations that might be helpful. Like it changes language in the Department of Agriculture's authority to allow them to enter into partnerships, to assist landowners to get into the carbon offset market programs. And it does the same thing with the Department of Environment and encourages them to get into, to help landowners get into those programs. Any questions so far? Nope. All right. The Department of Environment, there's some changes to some funds that they administer. The first one, well, there's some changes to the water infrastructure assets program that they administer. This is going to require MDE to be more active when, I guess, there's a dam that needs to get replaced. If it turns out it's blocking fish passages, this forces MDE to get in there and fix that immediately. if fish passages aren't involved in the situation, they would be notifying the Maryland Industrial Development Financing Authority to potentially come in and look at putting in, they look like small hydroelectric plants that would generate energy. That's not mandatory, that's just something for them to look at when when they discover these dams that they need to take out. Oh, do we have questions?
Did you have a question, Senator, now, or can you wait till the end?
Wait till the end.
All right. So then you've got the Maryland Water Quality Financing Administration and then the Maryland Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund. There's small tweaks to those programs and funds that will allow them to use their program money for broader purposes. And the same thing with the Maryland Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund. It just expands the uses that those programs are allowed to be used for. It sets up a new commission, the new Green and Blue Infrastructure Policy Advisory Commission. That commission is going to make recommendations for actions that these agencies can take in the future to, I think, help encourage people to access these carbon markets that I was talking about earlier. And then in a similar vein, there's a task force on state and local government accounting for natural capital, and that's going to look at the GASB accounting standards to see if there's any public accounting maneuvers that you can do with these new assets to, I think, leverage more money. And then DNR is going to, and here's where the bill does have a fiscal cost, is DNR has to have a study done on a new, what was it? It was on new ways to track these assets. I think DNR is gonna do a study, and that study was gonna have a cost to it. And there's an expansion to what the 2010 Bay Trust Fund can be used for. They'll also be used for pay for success contracts. And then an expansion of some other programs that are under DNR, like the ecosystem services, which I guess is gonna buy easements on properties. And then there's some changes to the forest conservation and carbon sequestration program. It would allow landowners to use forests on state lands that are reforested or afforested under the Forest Conservation Act to satisfy buffer or insurance provisions required by registries or protocols associated with private forest carbon credit transactions. So it comes back to that idea of getting more people to take advantage of these carbon credit programs that are out there.
Senator Young.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it got answered. It seems like it's just approval to use money different more than it is new money.
Yes.
That's correct. Would this go over to something like housing, being able to shift money over to zero energy housing? This is a big issue I had, and I guess I'm going out with a whimper because I finally got Governor O'Malley to put some money in the budget for him, and Governor Hogan came in and cut it out, so nothing ever happened. But environmentally, the only black mark I ever got from the environmental community was I voted against the offshore wind. Because I sat down and showed the governor with the subsidy that we were talking about using for that, we could have put 1 million people in zero energy housing. That would have required no oil, no gas, and almost no electricity. Environmental community always gave me a big round of applause and then never supported it. But I'm just hoping that maybe if a program like this, we might be able to do a little something in that area if we have people step forward that want to do it.
I don't know how that might fit in or not, but
It doesn't prevent it.
no.
These programs are being, None of these changes are down to that minutia. These are sort of very broad changes. We'd have to dig into to how that.
I threw it in as a broad change because you mentioned a lot of departments, and you could put housing in there as one of them too.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes, and a bunch of people want to speak. Senator Corrigan.
Thank you. Very quick, just to Senator Young's point, I think I got that answer. It's tweaks and changes. I heard you say multiple times, no new funding, correct?
Other than that study.
Other than the
Right,
DNR is gonna
right,
have some
right, that's
costs
fine.
for a study.
And then the second part, we're secondary, what was the vote in EE?
We are primary.
We're primary. Okay,
Budget and tax
EE
primary.
secondary, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I misread
EE.
that. My apologies, never mind.
Get a second crack at it.
Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of mine's been answered, but just want to make sure. This does not, does this, we do have water funds for communities who want to build water systems, et cetera. I haven't read the whole 48 pages, but I kind of glanced through it here. Is this impacting that existing fund and just saying you can use it for different things? Or is it having no impact on that?
Senator Alford.
Thank you. I might have to get back to you. I think I know the answer, but it's a concern, so I want to make sure I get you the right answer. From my understanding, it wouldn't allow those funds to be used in any different way than the federal government, because they're federal funds, would allow them to be used. So we still have that kind of check.
We do have a state water fund, I forget the name of all these, but the municipalities can get a loan or a grant to improve their water
It's
system.
revolving loan.
Yeah, okay.
That's one
Okay.
question.
Okay.
You know, all the comments we had last year, I think it was called the Bay Restoration Fund, where they were wanting to move money in.
Yep.
And a lot of comments about, is this impacting the sewage treatment plants?
Mm-hmm.
The answer last year was no, that they got priorities.
Yes.
Does this change any of that?
It should not, no.
No.
Okay.
I mean, we'll check that, but
Yeah, we'll
it
check.
should not.
And not to belabor this point, but you have a commission, or at least one commission, and a task force in here. Is it written in here that these have to be geographically spread out?
I will double check.
'Cause
I
if
know that's
not, they
important.
should be.
Yep, we will double check, and if it's not, I hear your concern, and it absolutely should be geographically
We've heard that
represented.
concern, yes.
We got billions of trees and we got a lot of water, so there'll
Right.
be someone from those parts of the state at least being able to have a little bit of input on something.
I hear you.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay, so we'll check on those. Mr. Chair, can I just make kind of the overarching pitch?
Yeah.
Here, which is, Senator Zani and I serve on the Chesapeake Bay Commission, and part of our frustration is we put 40 years of work and a tremendous amount of money from state, local, and feds into the cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay. And we've done tremendous work, and we've made great progress. This bill is really about how do we leverage the private sector to be a better partner in that work through, again, some tweaks here and there. It's a comprehensive bill to provide for them to make greater investments across the board. Last year, this committee in the Senate passed unanimously. It got held up in the House. It was work grouped by the House over the interim. I think it's a stronger bill this year, and the administration is in support of this bill as well. So, once we get answers to the questions Senator Edwards had and Senator Young, I would ask for a favorable motion.
Yep, I want to move this one next week too,
Okay.
because he has got to deal with it too. So,
Got it.
yeah, Senator Jackson.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 4 of the fiscal note, it mentions to establish a master lease purchase agreements with state agencies to support projects to enhance water quality on state lands. Does that include parks?
Are you on, you're on conference?
348, yeah. I'll follow with you.
well,
It's on the page 4 of the fiscal note.
Got it, okay, we'll talk about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. All right, everybody, another day of good work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 bills. We passed 3. and one that goes to EE. That was the primary. So we got 4 out of 13. That's okay. I think we still did good work. And we'll put those to the floor next week. And we will get some of these big ones done and out on the floor next week also. Thank you all very much. Good job.